All right, here we are. We are live. We have Darryl here with us from Paprika. I am Uncle Tickles. We are excited today because this is my favorite movie. Quite simple, and we have an actual, film critic here to join us and talk about it. Darryl, please introduce yourself to some of the people that are listening or tuning in that might not be familiar with you.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Darryl Mansel. I am a film critic with the North Carolina Film Critics Association, as well as the Southeastern Film Critics Association. I host a movie review podcast and website called Paprika Reviews, where we review movies, man. It's pretty much what we do as critics. We just get down on the latest, and every once in a while go back and review some old stuff too.
Yeah, and I was really excited to see that you guys are back on Patreon. Just chomping at the bit to get out there and support you. Do you want to mention your Patreon here for people who are listening?
Yeah, much appreciated. Patreon.com/Paprika Reviews, Poprika. It's like paprika with an O instead of an A is the easiest way to think about it.
That's right. My dog, or one of my dogs who was rescued, her name is Pepperika, which we think is also an attempt at paprika, but just spelled Pepperika. We call her Pepper for short. Normally we jump right into the film, pretty quickly. But, since we have the honor and prestige of having an actual film critic, I had some questions for you. I'm always curious. For me, I've talked a little bit about how I got into film, kind of this combination of variables where latchkey kid, the town I grew up in had a 99-cent theater, and also, that was the cable was starting to be available to a lot of different people. And, you don't have parental guidance. You get to watch a lot of different movies. So how did you get into movies? Was there a loved one, a specific movie, another gateway? I know you're into comics or something like that.
Yeah. I struggle with this question, man. I just remember I've always been in. No idea how I got in, but I do remember the one movie that kind of opened my eyes to things would be Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Because to me, that is one of the most perfect blends of story and storytelling, acting, directing, pacing, and score. It's also the first time I really paid attention to a score of a movie that let me know that, okay, this music is supposed to, make me feel these feelings that we're having. And that's when I really started to kind of break down and analyze. And I'm like, why do I love this movie so much? And that was 1994 or 93.
Which not true romance, 1993.
Yeah. The 90s were surprisingly great for movies. And I just kind of grew from there, really. And I didn't really notice it. It wasn't really a thing until someone saw my collection one day at my apartment. They're like, this is a lot of movies. And I hadn't really, noticed it or thought about it up to that point, but I was ingrained.
That's something I hadn't really considered. It's kind of flexing your movie knowledge simply by having a collection, right? With just the, how pervasive streaming is right now. People don't have these enormous DVD collections. I also talk about one of my big influences was one of our good friends in high school. Her mom, Mrs. Kelly, her basement was like a Blockbuster. It was better than a Blockbuster because she had cuts that you couldn't get, and she would sit there and tell you about all the different movies, right? Like if you watch Jaws, she was going to pull Orca for you and tell you about, how Orca came before that and give you a little bit of, it was like this, really it was an early education into film. But yeah, you have DVDs and you're kind of like, what am I doing with these things? Do I even have anything that plays this anymore? I ran into that problem the other day. Computers, they don't have drives for CDs or DVDs anymore.
Man, it hurts me. I specifically bought this not great laptop that I have specifically because it has a DVD player in it. And it's I didn't want to pay extra to get an external DVD drive. I knew there'd be times where I would have to watch a movie in my office versus watching it out in the living room, whatever the case may be. So that was actually a huge influence as to why I bought this laptop in particular. And even though I don't really pull out my DVDs as much these days, because we have all these streaming services, and so much of what I own physically I can find, digitally. But
Right.
still, it's nice to have when like we have crappy internet in this neighborhood, and that drops sometimes. So,
or there's a movie that just for some reason or another slips through the streaming cracks and isn't available. We're watching a movie or talking about a movie today, True Romance, starring Christian Slater. Pump Up the Volume. Famously, you can't stream it anywhere. I had to buy that DVD because I wanted, I just wanted to watch it for the, movie club came about during COVID, and it was me and a bunch of buddies, and this is what we were doing. We were picking a movie, and we'd watch it. We'd get together and do a Zoom meeting and just talk about that movie that we watched. And a lot of times they were just movies we've all seen before. But so we picked Pump Up the Volume, and to much of our chagrins, we had to all buy the DVD. So you mentioned a couple of the things that made Jurassic Park great for you. I imagine those are the things that are important to you when you are considering what makes a movie great.
Yeah, I mean, there's two different ways you can look at what makes a movie great, I think. Like I said, that goulash of people that know what they're doing, that blends well together. But honestly, what makes a movie great is having everybody unified under one person's vision. That's what makes a movie great. You can have all of you can have the best writer and the best director and the best person doing your sound or cinematography. But if they are not all cohesive and unified and think they all know how to do it best, then you can end up with something like a Golden State Warriors team that goes like 73-9 and doesn't win a championship or whatever the case may be. It's you have to all be on the same team. Filmmaking is an incredibly collaborative thing, and if everyone's not on the same page, then there's chances are you're not going to get a great movie. And I think that unifying vision is what is the key and instrumental to making a great film.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I kind of want to ask you a follow-up question to that. You brought up that Golden State Warriors team. So if, in large part, we view that team as a failure, right? Because they fell short of winning the championship, had the best regular season record, but didn't close it out. Mm-hmm. I guess I see movies, I guess it's harder to view them so definitively, right? Because even Best Picture, it's like, how many times does the movie we all love the most win Best Picture?
Zero is the answer to that question.
Right. So it's like one of those things, like, we don't really look to the awards to validate our movie opinions a lot. And there isn't a championship at the end of the day unless you're counting Best Picture for the Oscars. So, I just wonder, like, what's what's a really great example of a movie that was close to being great but fell short, in your opinion?
Close to being great, but fell short.
Yeah, this Warriors team, the Warriors team that had everything, had all the pieces, and you're watching it just falls apart at the very end.
I watched a movie. This is going to be incredibly left field. I watched a movie 2 days ago. It's a Japanese crime noir movie called A Cruel Gun Story. And it blows its entire goodwill in the last 5 minutes. Like it's a heist movie where they're trying to heist an armored car on the day of a big horse race. So all the cash is being moved from the horse round to where it's going to be counted at and all that good stuff. Bad guys intercept that. They got it. Of course, it being an ensemble heist, there's double crosses and stuff goes right and all that. Now I'm digging it. I'm really enjoying it. And people are dropping left and right like flies. And then that last couple of minutes, it just all falls apart, man. You're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. What's happening here? It's so close to being great, man, but couldn't quite come across the finish line.
That's great. And I'm glad you brought up a basketball analogy because I have one a little bit later. I'm going to pull out, and I wasn't sure if it was going to hit or not. So hopefully it will. Okay. So outside of Jurassic Park, you want to throw out a few of your other favorite movies before we jump into True Romance here?
Yeah, I'll talk about 2 or 3, man.
Yeah.
First and foremost, Blade Runner 2049 is my favorite movie of all time. Right at the turn of, I guess that would be, 2020, I named it as my number one film of the 2010s. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, that has finally supplanted The Matrix as my favorite movie of all time.
Wow.
As a person who absolutely hates Blade Runner, which is heresy for every film critic out there, I adore Blade Runner 2049. Blade Runner is looking at the human condition in a philosophical sense, I think 2049 is looking at the human condition through actions taken, because the most human people in that movie are the replicants. The least human, like, Ryan Gosling's boss ordering him to kill a kid just because the kid was born. That's some of your most soulless and human actions that take place. So it's a look at the human condition through actions taken. What I like about the sci-fi genre the most is using the sci-fi trappings to explore the human condition. Also in there, man, you can never go wrong with Die Hard. To me, it is the perfect action movie. Like there is no better paced, better characterized. In 1988-ish, you're coming off of, I think we had a couple of Stallones, a couple of Schwarzeneggers at this point, big muscly dudes who were military or secret ops or CIA or something like that. And John McClane is just this everyday dude. He doesn't have the giant muscles. He looks like us. We can relate to him, who's just wrong time, wrong place. And you see his joys and his frustrations as he goes through all this. And he's a very relatable character inside of a great action movie. And lastly, man, Airplane. You cannot go wrong with one of the greatest comedies of all time. I think it still holds the record for most jokes per minute in the movie. A combination of written jokes and setups and payoffs and visual gags. It's my brand of silliness.
Awesome. Now, is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Okay. I want to make sure we're on the same page, because we watch it every Christmas in our house. It's one of my favorites. I 100% am on board with that. But I know that's become a divisive topic within the film world.
Yeah, it's not divisive. Those people are just wrong. Plain and simple, wrong.
Yes. All right. Team Christmas Party. So we're here to talk about True Romance. We've already kind of mentioned it's comes out in 1993, written by Tarantino, directed by Tony Scott. This movie, really, even though Reservoir Dogs comes out before this movie, this is the movie that allows Tarantino to become Tarantino. He famously sold the script for $50,000. That's the $50,000 he used to fund Reservoir Dogs. There's a cool story, which, it's hard to confirm, but it was printed in Maxim. They did a big write-up on the movie. And basically, Tony Scott was hooking up with one of Quentin Tarantino's friends. And she kept nagging at him, you have to meet my friend. He's amazing. And he had been through this. And he's like, all right, tell him to give me his script. And if I don't like it in the first 3 pages, I'm going to throw it away. He gave him True Romance. And he wanted to make both of them. But, kept Reservoir Dogs for himself wisely. The movie itself has 7.9 out of 10 stars on IMDb, a 93% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. The plot of the movie is Christian Slater plays Clarence Worley, and he is, I guess he's tricked by his boss. He has a rendezvous with a sex worker, falls in love, goes to get her stuff back from her pimp Drexel, and ends up bringing back a lot of drugs. And then just kind of some insanity ensues, a chase, a standoff. This to me is one of the, I was 11 years old in 1993. I don't know if I was 11 when I saw this movie, but for me, immediately was a movie that it was just nothing I'd seen before, right? The dialogue was nothing I'd heard before. And there's a reason, it really wasn't, I saw this before Reservoir Dogs. I know that for a fact. It pretty much was a box office failure. Critics liked it. Do you remember when this movie came out? Was this on your radar at that point, around the same time you're watching Jurassic Park, or how'd that work for you?
So I came to Jurassic Park a year late, actually. I didn't get it until Christmas of 94. So I came to Jurassic Park late. I came to this late too. I'm 20 days shy of 11 the day this movie comes out. And I didn't see this for years. I think I first saw True Romance sometime in the mid 2000s. It was one of those movies that was we would get together and talk about whatever Tarantino movies were out at that point. So you're talking Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown, I think, and that's about it. And people are like, yeah, but have you seen From Dusk Till Dawn? That's a Tarantino-ish movie. Or have you seen True Romance? Just never got around to it. Or Four Rooms. I never got around to it, and then I finally did, and I was like, oh, I totally missed the boat. I couldn't imagine seeing this movie at the age I was at when this came out. My brain would have melted out of my ears had I saw it at that young age.
Yeah, I mean, I I'm really bad about knowing what age you were and what grade, but I'm pretty confident I was in 7th grade, and this was one of those movies that was just on HBO a lot,
Yeah.
And I remember watching it with one of my best friends, Adam Sadarski. Shout out to Suds if he's in the chat. And it was one that it was just like, I hadn't seen anything like this. I hadn't seen people talk like this. The whole thing was just, an adrenaline filled ride. And we're going to get to and I think what makes a lot of it that way is the casting in this movie. I don't know if there's another movie out there that has more bang for buck in terms of big names that are only on screen for like 5 minutes, right? We're going to go down the list. It's pretty wild. There's another section we like to hit all the time. We call it TMC Cosmic Giggles. That's just coincidences that we have unplanned from movies that we've covered in the past. Our first movie that we covered for TMC was MacGruber, Val Kilmer and MacGruber, Val Kilmer in this. Yeah. It was actually picked it was picked by Collider as the #1 comedy in the last 10 years, which is crazy. I enjoyed
MacGruber was
MacGruber.
Come on,
was
Collider.
I really enjoy the film. I'd stop short of putting it #1 on my list, but so that's why we covered it. We were kind of reviewing that. And then outside of that, just there's been an overall trend with this podcast. Again, not planned, just coincidence. A lot of the movies we pick, almost all of them with the exception of The Graduate, box office failures, critical or cult favorites later. So something I was reaching a little bit on the TMC Cosmic Giggles for this one. The first real big section we're going to go into was a question that was launched to us from a kind of someone that's near and dear to both of our hearts, Patrick O'Connor. Mm-hmm. And so he had asked whether or not True Romance is in the Tarantino universe. I have some very strong thoughts on it. We'll go to you, Darryl. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, there's one incredibly strong connection there with the character of Alabama, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. We get that mentioned in Reservoir Dogs. I think Mr. White mentions Alabama to Joe, if I recall correctly.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your strongest connection, if I remember correctly.
For sure. And just for people who may not be familiar, we'll take a step back really quick. So a lot of people are aware of this. Tarantino, like a lot of writers, has created a universe, where these characters from his different movies all live within the same universe. So theoretically, these people could intersect. They could, famously, there was rumored to be a movie, a script floating around where the Vega brothers, so it's Travolta from Pulp Fiction and then Michael Madsen from Reservoir Dogs.
Right.
Where we're supposed to be in. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that tie it together, right? The Red Apple cigarettes is another hint. They're in a lot of them. But so there is something cool about it. There's there are some nuances, right? So the universe exists, but not all of his movies that he's made are characters within the universe. So there's the universe where a lot of the characters live in, and then there's movies from within that universe.
Correct.
That those characters from his movies would go and watch and see. And Pulp Fiction is a great example. Uma Thurman talks about a pilot she did, and she's basically describing Kill Bill.
Right. Fox Force 5.
Yeah, Fox Force 5. And she's describing, Kill Bill. So there's that. And then and another really clear connection, I think that really proves outside of the Alabama one is Inglourious Bastards. So you have Saul Rubinek is the actor's name.
Yeah, Lee
Donowitz. Yeah, I was blanking on his name. But in Inglourious Bastards, you have Donnie Donowitz, and Lee Donowitz says, one of his ancestors was a war hero. He's referring to the Donnie Donowitz, the Bear Jew, in Inglourious Bastards. So another really strong connection.
Yeah, a lot of people like to talk about the MCU as, no one's ever done this before. It's no one's ever had this cast of crew, and I'm like, we've seen it twice before this. I mean, we've seen Tarantino do this. We've seen Kevin Smith do it, both of them back in the 90s. Like, this is not a new concept. MCU just did it more cohesively and more tightly connected than the other ones.
And, it depends on what you make. Are you talking about the Marvel comics, when they created a universe? Are you talking about the written word, or are you talking about what's happened on screen? And in that case, yeah, comics have been around for ages and ages. For me, when I think of universe building, you think of Tolkien, I think of George R. R. Martin. I don't typically think of filmmakers, but but yeah, here we have Tarantino, and I think it was for me one of those things that I haven't known my entire life. I kind of thought, I was like, oh, this is really cool. He gives homages to his favorite films, his favorite directors. In this film alone, there's a couple lines. There's a line from Rumblefish that Dennis Hopper says when he's talking to Clarence. He's like, "You're just like your mom," just straight from Rumblefish. So it's just, when I found out about it, it enriched the movies. I really enjoyed looking for it and trying to pick that out. So Patrick, thanks for that question. We definitely think it is. And if there's any other connections from True Romance to the Tarantino universe that we're not thinking of, let us know. Oh, there was one more that I was thinking of. It's subtle and it's probably a little bit of a stretch, but in Reservoir Dogs, you have Tim Roth, who's spoiler alert, an undercover cop, right? And he's talking about acting and the whole idea of cops and acting. And here in True Romance, there's the scene where Tom Sizemore is talking to Bronson Pinchot and just saying, like, "Act, motherfucker, act." It's like this idea of the police having him act. I just thought it was great. Anything else on that before we move on, Daryl?
No, I mean, I think you covered them all, and I never would have put together the cops and the acting, but yeah, when you go undercover, man, there's definitely a certain element of slipping into a different skin and having to completely be a different person. I mean, it's what ended up consuming Donnie Brasco to some degree.
Sure.
But yeah, that's a good connection. And then having to craft that whole story, which you see in Reservoir Dogs of Mr. Orange and the dogs in the bathroom with the police and all that. It's acting.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was like again, subtle, but and again, maybe a stretch, but for sure the ideas and the themes are both there.
Yeah.
So let's jump into some of our favorite scenes, and I'll let you start because I mean, I could really just list the whole movie chronologically.
Now, we got 118 minutes of favorite scenes that we're going to talk about.
That's right.
I mean, you got to get the elephant out of the room right off top, man, and it's the Dennis Hopper business. That's one of those great confluences of great writing, great acting, great directing, and great editing. And editing will, determine the flow and pace. And just the back and forth. You get Chris Walken and Hopper for maybe 7-8 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's so many of these instances, right, where you just get them just for, that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah, a cup of coffee there. And just their interaction back and forth made me realize just how much I miss Dennis Hopper on screen. Is he came in, he nailed it, he stuck it. And also how much I miss Chris Walken caring in movies. Have made me realize that as well. Like, he is eating that scenery up and is really enjoying it. And unfortunately, you don't get that anymore out of Christopher Walken.
No, he's going for it. He's definitely going for it in that scene, and playing, a Sicilian, which is like that's the furthest thing from what Chris. Just the whole thing is unbelievable, but it's believable. And you're right about Hopper, because he's only on screen for this. You get him for the 2 scenes, but in those few scenes, like the whole relationship between him and Clarence is established, right? You get it, and he does it so tenderly. And thinking back on some of his other roles, like thinking of him from Blue Velvet, or just the range that he was able to display throughout his career. Yeah, what a treasure. And that scene, it's a tough scene because it is one of those looking through the lens of 2021, and you're listening to the dialogue. And knowing that it's a white guy that wrote it, Quentin Tarantino, it's tough. But I also think viewing that scene, through the lens of Hopper, and the fact that he understands, that his time's up and he's trying to push these buttons. He's working at, Walken's deepest insecurities, kind of, it's this game of chess. It's like, it really is. It's like 3D chess that you're watching it being played out. And that's one of the few scenes. So there's, Tarantino had the script, but there was very little. He wasn't the director, but I heard him do an interview where he said there was very little ad-libbing or improving on this at all. And the one exception being in this scene, there's, the eggplant cantaloupes back and forth. That was improv. And then they let Brad Pitt as Floyd. A lot of what Brad Pitt does as Floyd is improvised in this. But yeah.
It's great for a man who, like you said, who knows his time is up, and generally, like, he's not stalling for time, but he just generally wants to mess with these guys for as long as he can, and just to piss them off into going ahead and taking them out, and the fact that it's played as two ways, like, there is a dangerous element to this scene, but it is also played as lighthearted and jokey as well. It's just two guys kind of just strangely vibing, even though there's a clear balance of power there, or a shift of power or control there. It's weirdly played, but I love it.
Yeah, no, there is a strange admiration between both of them. There seems to be, and there's also something about Hopper's character that feels like someone and I'm not thinking specifically, but just that person who's just read a lot and can, when they hear someone that's saying something that is kind of, just stupid or dumb or something, and they just are smarter than that other person. And rather than being like, no, you're an idiot, they'll be like, oh, okay, this is what you think. Well, do you know this? And then giving them the history lesson and just breaking them down. It's like, oh, and I also think there's an aspect of it too, where he's looking around, he's sized it up. Like I said, there was recently, because of another really well-known movie podcast that covered Goodfellas, there was this big trend in people examining what was the best scene of someone dying, going into a scene that they knew they were going to die, right?
Ooh,
what's the best?
A good topic.
Like, what's the best for that? There are some really, really good ones. And, obviously Joe Pesci was one of the ones that they inspired that. And arguably what a lot of people consider the best. But this one, I think, if not the best for me, is in that argument. But I guess the point I'm trying to get at is, I think there's an aspect where he knows what the score is, right? And he probably knows that this could be long and drawn out. Like, this could be a torture situation, where they just torture him till they get what the information that he wants, and that he will eventually get it. He's a former police officer or has connections to the police, so he kind of knows, and then he just knows, if I push him far enough, I can maybe just end this fast.
Yeah, and I think that is pretty much his motivation. He knows what's going to go on. As soon as that hand gets sliced, he knows what the game is going to be. So he pushes him to. Walken says, "I haven't killed anybody since 1984." Yeah. He finally got that man to break and lose his cool. He got what he wanted.
Oh yeah, and I'm just having this thought now. I meant to research this. Was one of his henchmen was he one of the bad guys, the Fratellis from the Goonies?
Yes.
I believe it was.
It's the one he speaks Italian to.
Exactly.
Go do the thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the Fratellis. Right?
He's like, what happened? Oh, okay, well, that's what happened. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was interesting. I was really interested to hear what you're going to say about that scene. It's one that I was just looking back on, and again, it's one I've looked at as a favorite scene of mine, and just looking at it through a slightly different lens, this on this rewatch, because it's been a couple years since I watched the movie. Any other favorite scenes for you?
Any other favorite scenes? Like, that's always the one that stands out to me. That's the one where I see that scene and I'm like, is this the seed of the idea for this entire movie? Was how can I fit this scene into a movie? What else is out there?
Really quickly, I another anecdote I just realized I had in my notes. Tarantino, when asked about this scene, said that this was so what inspired this scene was a black friend was talking to a racist. That's where and so he took basically the way his friend, his black friend had kind of schooled this racist Italian dude, and just was like, well, I'm going to take that and give it to Hopper, got his friend's permission. It was like that. It was like one of the biggest word ups I've ever seen. It was just like, I'm going to give this to him. So that was based off of a real conversation.
Right on. Yeah. I get down with that.
For sure. I was like, well, yeah.
Any scene with Floyd, man, it's much needed. Like, Floyd, and I guess you could say Rappaport, are your bits of levity throughout this movie. You get a lot more Rappaport, but I think what Brad Pitt does with Floyd is far, far better. Without that, you don't get Pineapple Express.
Yes, that's the big
Apatow said
legacy.
that.
Yeah, one of the big legacies of this film. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so anytime he's on screen, I'm already smiling and giggling, knowing he's going to say something stupid. Earliest I think I've ever seen Brad Pitt. I don't know if
he was in Thelma and Louise before.
Yeah,
this.
I don't know which one came first. Okay, so Thelma and Louise came first. So he's worked with both Ridley and Tony Scott then.
Yeah.
If that's anytime with Floyd, I'm there for it, man.
Yeah, and there was some conversation as to whether or not he could have had the Clarence role, and then there was I wasn't gonna totally bring it up, but I think it's worth mentioning just because there's whispers that he was offered that, and he was like, no, I just want I'll just take this Floyd spot. And there's this weird universe where maybe he exists as like one of the greatest character actors we've ever had. If he doesn't become the biggest superstar on the planet for a while.
Honestly, I will go on record as saying I'm not a huge Christian Slater fan in the first place. So please someone send me to that universe where Brad Pitt plays this role, and I will be a happier man for it.
Well, this is more well documented. Famously, Val Kilmer wanted the Clarence role real bad, and they didn't they thought he was a little too old for the role at the time, and so he was one of these people. There was a lot of, the reason the movie has a cast like it does is there was a lot of buzz around Tarantino, and there's a lot of actors who wanted to be part of this, and that's just kind of how you get what we see that, we're going to talk about in best performances later, just how many people we can kind of go off of. So I agree. Floyd steals the scene. I love Dick Ritchie. His audition is just, I fucking love his audition. And then that's another thing just worth mentioning. I don't think there's a space for this necessarily for us to really dig into, but just how this is kind of a commentary on Hollywood too. This is a movie made about how Hollywood's kind of in it's the backdrop of everything that's happening. Right. We'll talk about the Lee Donowitz character, and he's based off of a real life person in Hollywood. So it's kind of an interesting look behind the scenes, I think, if you're paying attention.
That audition is terrible.
And he gets the part. TJ Hooker. It's so phenomenal. Is that all you have?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what other scenes you might want to bring up.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, maybe I don't want to beat this horse to death. My favorite scene from this movie was always the Hopper scene. Mm-hmm. I watch it. This go around, it was just a little harder for me to watch it. And maybe it was because we had some listeners that were, had pointed out that, hey, this scene is potentially problematic. And so I was going through it with probably those comments in my head. But if in years past, a very close number 2 to that Hopper scene was the scene with Gary Oldman and Drexel.
Spivey.
I fucking love Drexel. He might be one of my favorite characters created ever in moviedom ever. And again, some controversy surrounding the origins of Drexel. Tony Scott, there was a period where he was a little bit of a loose cannon. He was he was going around saying a lot of shit in interviews and talking shit about Joel Silver, Christian Slater. He said that Gary Oldman based the Drexel character off of his drug dealer, who then Gary Oldman was like, are you trying to get me fucking arrested? Backed off that. Oldman says he heard some kids talking outside of his trailer and just kind of worked in some of that. So not clear if it's really based off of his drug dealer. Gary Oldman did say, however, that Tony Scott called him, said, hey, I can't tell you a lot about the movie, but you play a pimp who's white who thinks he's black. And Gary Oldman said, I'm in.
Sold. It is, as far as like ranking Gary Oldman performances, Drexel Spivey is number 1 for me. Barely number 1. Because I really love his Winston Churchill. But he is, it's deliciously just creepy. Like it's peak Oldman before Oldman peaked.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Like he just eats the role up. You can tell he's enjoying himself. And he just goes all in for it.
Yeah, I mean that the whole exchange, and even Christian Slater, like there's the turn of events where it's, me as a viewer, even having watched it 1,000 times, he comes across as intimidated, and he still kind of makes me believe, like, okay, Clarence maybe bit off a little more than he can chew. He's in this situation. Oh fuck! And then he rips off the I'm not looking at the TV because it's the Mac and it's from 1972 and I've seen it, you know, just like I'm not eating because I'm not hungry. You know, it's just like that whole back and forth, the swinging of the lights. And you know what? That scene might be the most Tony Scott scene in, you know, outside of there being a train in the movie as well. But just talking about like just how it's lit, the music, and that scene. I don't know if that. We'll talk about this too, again, I think a little bit more, but if Tarantino directs this movie, I'm not sure that scene is pulled off as well.
It plays out differently, like, because that would be early Tarantino, so it would definitely play out like a Tarantino now. I would love to see him how he plays with that, but Tarantino back then, maybe not. I think I don't know if the swing of the chandelier is part of the script, but if not, then that is a testament to great directing, because that chandelier going back and forth and that like, this is what you should pay attention to as to where the power lies in the conversation is who's holding the chandelier at the time.
Right. Yeah.
That's the swing of the seesawing of one-uppance, as it were. That's just brilliant filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, in a movie full of amazing lines, right? Like, I always try not to go into best quotes or best lines from a movie because it just ends up being a bunch of people like shouting movie lines, right? Yep. But you know, like, it ain't white boy day, is it? That might be the line of the fucking movie, you know? Like, I don't know. There's so many good ones, you know. Don't condescend me, motherfucker. Like, that's really good too, but like, it ain't white boy day, is it? Like, just the lunacy of it is just so beautiful. You know, it's a beautiful moment. And so for me, that scene, and really, like, I love the opening. You know, the Hans Zimmer score is, we sample it in our intro music. You know, for those eagle-eared listeners, you can hear a kind of chopped and screwed version of that. You know, I just like this idea. I think it sets everything up really wonderfully. Tarantino talks about pretty openly, like, he didn't have a girlfriend until he was 25. So when he's writing this, he's literally like he's just making up his fantasy girl. Like, oh yeah, she watches kung fu movies, she drinks beer, you know, she smokes, she loves sex, you know, like all this stuff. It's like he's writing his dream girl because she doesn't exist yet. And it just sets everything up, and it's a little cheesy, you know, but it's you know, the other line, either early in that sequence, there's the you know, I'm not a hooker, I'm a call girl, and there's a difference, you know. I just think I don't know. I love it. So really, I could just do the opening scene through the Drexel scene. You talked about the Hopper Walken scene pretty extensively. I don't think we need to cover that. And then there's the hotel scene at the end, because we've talked about Lee Donowitz a lot. You know, he really revs it up. Saul Rubinek is just like, he's going for it. The two actors that play his bodyguards, they're going for it. You know, you have, you know, Sizemore and Penn, you know, who are just fucking explosive. You know, it's just that. And for me, you know, I'm talking about in the beginning of this episode how I hadn't seen a movie like this. This ending to me, you know, and I didn't grow up on spaghetti westerns or anything like that. So, you know, this idea of like a Mexican standoff, I wasn't aware of it. You know, to me, this was the origin for it, and that was an awesome thing about Tarantino for me. Was as I got familiar with him, he turns me on to Sergio Leone, you know, and I'm going back and I'm watching his stuff, and I'm like, okay, he turns me on to, like, you know, kung fu, and you know, I would have never watched any of that probably if I didn't fall into a little bit of a Tarantino rabbit hole.
Tarantino movies are film school light, if you know what to look for, and he's pretty open about it in interviews. Like he's very open about his homaging or ripping off, because he rips off from the greats. For sure. He makes it kind of his own thing, and he's very open about it. So if you got your notepad and your pen ready, oh, he ripped off, okay, I gotta go watch that. Okay, I gotta go watch that. Watching this movie for the first time in probably like a good 5-10 years since I've seen it, I forgot that it opens talking about Sonny Chiba's Street Fighter 1, 2, and 3. And I'm like, oh, I haven't watched Street Fighter movies in years. I got to kind of put that on my list now. And you know, you can always find something new. And every new Tarantino movie that comes out, you're like, oh, all right, we're back in class now.
That's
right. We're going to find something new. I will say that we spent a lot of time from the opening through Drexel Spivey through the Hopper. That's the first half-ish of the movie. And that's, I think, the better half of the movie. Like all of your iconic setup is in that first half. I'm not the biggest fan of the back half as compared to that first half, but what saves that back half are those two gung-ho ass cops. I love those guys, and they are also a good bit of the levity needed in those 10 standoffs and whatnot.
There's that. You also have, and we've kind of hit on Rappaport as well. He's in that later half, and Bronson Pinchot, who I think is again. There's so many huge names to talk about. I think they some of these guys are going to fall between the cracks or get lost in the shuffle. And Gandolfini, that's a scene I have on here too. Young Gandolfini. How crazy is it to watch this and have the knowledge of The Sopranos? And this is before The Sopranos. That's Tony Soprano to me. Like watching him do this, like that's the origins of Tony. Like you can't convince me that in some weird that maybe Tony Soprano doesn't live in this Tarantino universe just simply because my introduction to Gandolfini was that scene. So brutal. It's one that again, if for fans out there of the show Yellowstone, there was a scene with Beth, I think in season 2, which I if anyone wants to argue that it wasn't inspired or pulling on this, please, be my guest. I'll argue with you all day, but it's almost a scene for scene shot from a lot of the Alabama Gandolfini. You're right. The second half that this film in general could probably do with it's probably like 15 minutes too long, but there are some really great parts of some really great elements to that, to the ending of the movie. The hotel scene, the Gandolfini scene, and then really those actors that we kind of touched on being those
you
things.
You cannot convince me, or you cannot sway my opinion that scene with Gandolfini is what got him that role. Like I'm sure he went in and auditioned for Tony Soprano,
right? And
I'm sure that somebody at HBO casting director went back and pulled that and looked at it, and that is what cemented the deal for him to get that role.
It was on HBO all the time, so I mean, 100%. Yes, someone was watching True Romance and was like, "Hey, do you know that mob thing that we're casting for? Can we get this guy? Can we get the guy that's beating the shit out of this chick for like 20 minutes on screen?" Yeah, no. And you know what? Just going back really quick, I think it was talking about this scene kind of just fired something off that it was kind of a side question to Patrick's question about the universe. Scott Wortman asked specifically about Natural Born Killers, which so Natural Born Killers also, if you look at the credits, story by Tarantino. He's tried to remove himself from this movie as much as possible. He wrote it and ended up getting edited way out of his control. But here's something cool, and this is how it ties in. So that the idea of this story, it was actually supposed to be part of True Romance. So Clarence Worley in the original screenplay carried around this 500-page script that he was like Tarantino. He was a wannabe screenwriter.
Yeah.
And so the script that he was working on was Natural Born Killers. So there were, in the original script, there would be these parts where all of a sudden it goes to him writing this kind of like juiced up version of what him in Alabama, they're on the run, they're doing these killing, because there's a misconception. Some people believe that Natural Born Killers was based off of what the Harvey Keitel and Alabama thing would have been. Yeah. It's not necessarily, that's not the case. Tarantino had come out and said, no, it's part of this like in-world movie that Clarence was writing. So just as a heads up, I just thought that I would address that really quick, because I guess the violence of the two things are what kind of reminded me. We're going to talk about Tony Scott really quick. We're going to go into him. Because I think that's all the scenes I had for favorite scenes. Let's get here. So I guess you're probably more of a more well-versed, knowledgeable person when talking about directors. That's one of my favorite things about the Paprika group. There's a lot of people who are much smarter than I am, and I can kind of zone in on those conversations and learn quite a bit. So where does Tony Scott fall in your list of directors, and talk maybe specifically about this little run he has here?
Scott is actually relatively low on my list of directors. Like when someone, pounces on me, who are your favorite directors? Like Tony Scott's name is not going to come to mind. Ridley's might, Tony's won't,
Right.
which surprises me because you look at a list of Tony Scott's movies and he's very workmanlike, I think is the best way of putting it. Like all of his movies, for the most part, for me, are like right down the middle. Like his standout to me is always going to be Top Gun. And he might have one or two of them like, oh, don't watch that. But most of his is just like right in that, like on a scale of 1 to 10, he's right in like the 5, 6, 7, maybe sometimes an 8 range. It's very, very workmanlike.
And you're a Christopher Nolan guy, right?
Yes, I am 1000% a Nolan guy. He is my favorite director of all time. Nolan, then Denis Villeneuve, then probably Spielberg. 80s, 90s Spielberg, not today's Spielberg. but looking at his resume, man, I mean, Top Gun, dope. Beverly Hills Cop, dope. Days of Thunder is just Top Gun in a car.
Right.
The True Romance, I mean, we're talking about now. Crimson Tide is great. Enemy of the State, Spy Game is my favorite. Not my favorite. One of my top 5 favorite spy movies of all time, and I think it is severely underrated. And I always forget that Tony Scott directed that movie.
Man on Fire too.
Man on Fire. I mean, he had 3 Denzel collabs, I think. He had Crimson Tide, Man on Fire, and Deja Vu.
Yeah.
And Unstoppable. I think was Denzel Unstoppable, I think. Yeah. So he might have four collaborations with him. Like they had a good working relationship that ended up making okay movies.
Right. No, I mean, you're right though, because he is someone that kind of escapes your mind when you're trying to make these lists, but then you start to, and this happens with a lot of guys, right? It's one of those things that if you actually stop and look at their body of work, there's a lot more impressive directors than you're probably thinking of, right? And it's really easy to look at, especially these runs, right? Like you mentioned it, but I mean, Top Gun, Beverly Hills 2, Days of Thunder, Last Boy Scout, True Romance, Crimson Tide, like that's insane. That's I mean, all those movies I loved growing up and were on constant rotation. Last Boy Scout is one worth mentioning because the wheels start to kind of fall off for him there. You know, and that's we talk about when he was a little bit of a loose cannon. He worked with Joel Silver and Bruce Willis in there. Did not have a great experience. It's been pretty documented that neither did Joel Silver and a lot came out of that. Lee Donowitz's character, it's played by Saul Rubinek, who we've talked about, based off of Joel Silver. So, and this is, I think, one of the better things about the film, or one of the better stories, is Saul Rubinek didn't know this. So he's being directed in a way where Tony Scott is like just 100% just giving him lines, things that Joel Silver would do or say. And Saul Rubinek is just an unknowing participant in this, poor thing. I felt slightly bad for the guy, when he's like, I had no idea I was being Joel Silver. But when you consider just, the type of person Lee Donowitz is, I think it becomes clear of Tony Scott's opinion.
It definitely is clear. And I think Lee Donowitz, for me, is like on screen, that's a Hollywood producer to me.
Yeah.
Like that's if I think of like a characterization of a Hollywood producer, this is the one I'm going to think about.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a reason, because it's supposed to be an act, and from everything that I've gathered, and I've read a lot about this movie, people close to Joel Silver, said that it really bothered him because it was such an accurate depiction of the man, from his, the cadence and everything, which makes it somewhat suspect that maybe Saul Rubinek didn't know, when it's so spot on, but there's some very Tony, like this movie, again, it's undeniably Tarantino dialogue. Like you're listening to it and it's undeniably Tarantino, but then you're watching it and it's also Top Gun. So that's the thing that I love about it. Should Tarantino let more people direct his scripts?
No. Young Tarantino, yes. I mean, that's how you got From Dusk Till Dawn, right? That's written by Tarantino, directed by Robert Rodriguez. I know he's at the height of his powers now. If he's going to write something, the only person that should direct it is Quentin Tarantino. I mean, to the point where I think he got a screenplay award for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah. And
he went up there to, make a set the speech. And he's like, I have no one to thank because I'm the person who wrote this. So I will thank me. And that's very vintage classic Tarantino. I think no one could take what he puts on paper, what he also envisions in his head, and put it on the screen quite like Tarantino could do.
Yeah, I mean,
also, no one could push me out of the way to get to the bathroom, quite like Quentin Tarantino did last year.
Here's the thing, though. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this because I love Tarantino, but going back and rewatching this, and even Dusk Till Dawn, I love Dusk Till Dawn. There's just something I don't know. I guess what I want Tarantino to keep making and directing movies, right? But I guess I want him to just occasionally write something and let a dope director or someone that's maybe not like him direct it. I don't know. I just think there's something about that it just is, and I'm sure this could have turned out like you had talked about the Golden State Warriors, reference earlier, where it's like when everything's unified under a single vision, it works really well. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a scenario where someone else directs this movie and it's fucking dog shit, right?
Yeah,
it just is not a good movie, and potentially maybe that's what happened with. And again, I like Last Boy Scout, but if you listen to Tony Scott and Shane Black, the writer of The Last Boy Scout, the script that they wanted to make was superior to the movie that got made.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen what Shane Black's capable of. He did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is a brilliant script.
Right.
We know he's got the chops to throw out some good stuff, and we hear stories all the time of suits. There's always the suits, the nebulous suits coming in there to butcher and chop and edit a movie to fit whatever their criteria or standards are, whether it be runtime or hitting the demographics, whatever the case may be. I feel like Tarantino at this point would not let anybody direct his script because it's still his name attached to it, and he wants that control. Stepping out of that, the only thing I would want to see him is that rumored Star Trek script, because we have not seen him play in someone else's franchise before. Yeah. So that would be a little bit interesting. Not directed by Tarantino, but if you gave me a Star Trek written by Tarantino, as there's a script rumored out there somewhere, I would be interested in seeing what that was all about.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. I mean, that's 100% something. I mean, I just want to. It's hard for me to wrap my around because my mind immediately jumps to Spock doing Tarantino dialogue, and I just can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around Tarantino doing what Star Trek does best, which is that engineering sci-fi psychobabble, technobabble.
Yeah,
of reversing the polarities and all this and that. I don't see that coming from Tarantino, but it would be interesting to see how he kind of handles that aspect.
Yeah, no, that would be, I mean, and I'm on board with that 100%. I've been, pretty much on record saying that. Give me anything with Tarantino. I want to see him do all the universes and just see it get really weird. We're going to move to our best performances. And this is one where, again, we can talk for a real long time about a lot of different people. I'm going to put it to you this way. Do you go with, so I'm just going to say you get to choose either Patricia Arquette or Christian Slater, who you've already said you're not a huge fan of, or The Field. And then we'll kind of dissect it that way.
Patricia Arquette. It is one of my favorite Patricia Arquette roles. She brings an earnestness to that character, a person who is willing to change and make her life circumstances better. She says she's been in the game for 4 days, and you can tell this is not something that she is suited for. Right. She instantly falls for Christian Slater because he does have a weird kind of a loner charm to him. He's just kind of a shy thing, but he's got that affability that you could definitely glom onto in this movie. But seeing her performances and how she handles it, and just that ride or die nature that she has, the fact that she refuses to give up any information to James Gandolfini's character, she just takes that beating like a champ, and then that next day she's right there in the thick of things with them at the hotel. Yeah, whatever the case may be. That she of the two was the stronger character, I think, and I think Patricia Arquette plays that incredibly well.
She has that. I mean, again, I think it's one of the better lines in the film when Dick Ritchie's like, "Jesus Christ, what happened to you?" She's like, "Oh, I caught an elbow playing basketball."
In no world does she look like she ever plays an ounce of basketball.
And Dick Ritchie accepts it. Oh shit! You gotta take it easy.
And regurgitates it to Lee Donowitz later on. Oh, basketball.
Yeah, I fucking love Michael Rappaport. I know he's got a podcast. I need to listen to that more often. But God, I need some more Rappaport in my life. I agree. I mean, to me, Patricia Arquette was she was my dream girl for a very long time because of this movie. I was always perplexed on why she didn't ever seem to like take off more. Was one of the people who celebrated probably more than anyone that I'm aware of when she won the Academy Award for Boyhood.
Yeah.
When she won the Golden Globe for, I forget it was the prison escape. I'm blanking on the name of it. It's a weird name, but love to see her getting the recognition I thought she deserved, later in life. I agree. I think she's probably the winner. But the field is so damn good and it's so tantalizing that I'm going to choose the field just so we can get down. We're just going to run down the field really quick. Who we've talked about most of these people, but let's just make sure we're capturing it really quick. So you have we have Rappaport, Brad Pitt, Val Kilmer, Sizemore, Chris Penn, Saul Rubinek, Gary Oldman, Dennis Hopper, Walken, Bronson Pinchot, Gandolfini, and Samuel L. Jackson in the very beginning of this.
Yeah.
Such a small part, but I don't know who wins out of the field. Floyd and Dick Ritchie are real easy picks. How about this? Val Kilmer playing Elvis. He just gets down, plays Jim Morrison, plays Elvis. I feel like there's just a couple more he needs to play to get on, that Mount Rushmore of some of the great musicians. Yeah, right. I don't know. It's just to me, it probably has to be Goldman, but I feel like that's the easy way out. I don't know. It's just it's such a talented cast. It's really what makes the movie for me. Again, it's just it's sprinkled, and we talked about this in Zoolander too, right? There's a lot of really great performances in Zoolander, just small bit performances, people coming on for a second. I take it back. I made this mistake in the last episode. I kept confusing John Voight's character in Zoolander with Christopher Walken. I don't know why. I saw John Voight, but I wanted to do it then. I was going to say, oh yeah, Christopher Walken plays Zoolander's dad. No, he doesn't. That's John Voight. Nope. My bad. So yeah, I just think.
Yeah, well, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Which when it comes to you talking about Walken only has the one scene in this movie, and he's also famed for another one scene when it comes to Tarantino. Which is the better one scene? Is it them with Hopper in this, or is it the watch in Pulp Fiction?
Well, it's crazy because those are, it's some of the best dialogue in just movie history, and he gets both of them, right? Like, it's just like he gets, and I'm in a vendetta type of mood, and then I don't know. I lean towards this scene. And I think that's just more so because this was this was my introduction to all that. I saw Pulp Fiction after I saw this. When I was watching the watch scene, I was watching it through with the framing of the Hopper scene, and I'm just so I was never able to really remove the two, but it's, to me, it's the Hopper scene by an edge, but man, it's when Tarantino finds his muses like this, it's just like, it's amazing, right? Because he brings them in and he just is able to get them these little bit pieces, and then it's just what makes his film so much more rewarding. Since we have you on today, some of our viewers and listeners may not know, but you famously, to me, one of the things that really drew me to your podcast and were these drafts you would do. I'm a huge draft person, just an enormous nerd for the NFL draft and the NBA drafts. Been like that since I was a little kid. I love drafting anything I can get into. And I've seen there's some flattery and imitation out there. I've seen other movie podcasts writers do these sort of drafts, but we're gonna draft for this movie. You and I. So since you are the guest, I will give you the first pick in the draft, and the idea being that we'll just kind of go through till I listed off all those characters. We also have the two mains of Patricia Arquette and Christian Slater to choose from. So that gives us, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we have 14. We'll go 7 and 7. So Darryl, you are on the clock. Then. You are on the clock.
I'm gonna go ahead. I got to do it, man. First pick off the board is Gary Oldman as Drexel Spivey. Like, you can't. It is his number. Well, for some people, his number one role. It's like here, Fifth Element, and why am I blanking on Natalie Portman?
Oh, the professional.
There you go. Like, those are the top 3 Gary Oldmans, maybe for me. Well, for the public,
right?
But yeah, I gotta go. Drexel Spivey's number 1, man.
Okay, so I mean, so this is interesting. Sometimes, okay, we're gonna do some framework on drafting here, because in sports drafts you don't really see a response to a team picking someone a lot in the draft. You will occasionally, if you have teams within the same conference picking, maybe you'll see a team pick a quarterback and the next pick is an edge rusher from another team, and you don't see it too often. This is going to be more of like a tic-tac-toe type of choice. So you set the bar high with Oldman. It's he's going to carry the team, just for like the name, the household name part of it. I'm going to go with Pitt then. So we're balancing each other off. You got Oldman, I've got Pitt. We've got some big male names. It's they're going to go head to head as far as on the billiard, the signage out front of my theater. So you're up.
Man, that's a wily move, sir. I'll say that. As a draft veteran, I appreciate your scrappiness coming into this. If you took Pitt off the board, man, and I gotta take him before you snatch him, man. Chris Walken. I gotta go with Chris Walken in this. It is one of the Walken joints for me. Like, I think Chris Walken, I think The Watch, I think this, and I think The Omen.
So the pick I'm going to choose, I'm not going to say that this is necessarily high on his filmography. But again, now it seems like we got dueling marquees. The big names start going up there. Who's going to draw in the audience? I'm picking Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
So you have Brad Pitt, Sam Jackson. I don't know. That's a good foundation for anything you're going to build upon.
That's a great foundation. If I'm driving by and I see Brad Pitt, Sam Jackson, I'm like, what's going on here?
It's not bad. It's not going to be bad, right?
Are we getting a sequel to 7 and they couldn't get Morgan Freeman back?
Exactly. That's right.
Okay, then. So I got Oldman and I got Walken. I think it would be a good look if you want to go for some sympathy votes, man. That's when we snatch James Gandolfini off the board.
That was going to be. I mean, okay, so I'll match you with a dead guy, Dennis Hopper. I'll see your dead guy, and I'll raise you another dead guy.
Well done, sir.
I'll pull on those sympathy strings as well. I will not be outdone.
After that,
yeah.
That's when you start getting into that. Like, for me, I can tell you right now, if it's up to me, Christian Slater would stay on the board the whole time. Like, I'm drafting the best boy grip before I draft Christian Slater on this list.
That's fine. I'll take Christian Slater with my last pick. I loved. I love Pump Up the Volume. God, what was the one where he had the monkey heart?
See, that's no. I don't want to go. I don't want to.
Marissa Tomei, Christian Slater, A Monkey Heart. Again, that's a formulaic success for me. You can't go wrong.
I stay far away from Slater films. All right, I'm going to go ahead and grab up. Man, just going to spring a draft on me real quick. I'm going to go ahead and draft. That's not going to work. I'm going to go ahead and get. I'm going to take Patricia Arquette off my list.
Okay, I was hoping that she might slip a little bit. I'm gonna go with Kilmer. I love Val Kilmer. He's a weird dude, goes over the top on some things. So so we're just gonna run down things really quick. Your team currently stands at Gary Oldman,
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Walken,
Mm-hmm.
James Gandolfini,
Mm-hmm.
and Patricia Arquette.
Yep.
My team,
Mm-hmm.
we have Brad Pitt, we have Sam Jackson, we have Dennis Hopper, and we now have Val Kilmer. So we got 4 and 4. We each got 3 more. So just to kind of just go over who's still on the board. Rappaport's still on the board. Sizemore's still on the board. Chris Penn's still on the board. Saul Rubinek's still on the board. Bronson Pinchot. And of course your boy Christian Slater.
Listen. So the way our drafts go is we draft whatever the topic is. Let's say sci-fi movies, and then we put them up for votes anonymously. Player 1, 2, 3,
Right.
4 for people to vote on, and it's always what's gonna draw you the votes. And I know who's not gonna draw a vote. Is Tom Sizemore, just based off of his history in later life. So I think he can stick around for a while. I'm going to go ahead and pull Saul Rubinek.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like dude's just always kind of hovering around Hollywood, just kind of getting like one role every other year. And he's that guy. He's a certified that guy. Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Now, out of all the people that we're talking about, he's, you look at everyone and say, well, okay, was this when they were at the top of their game? You could make the argument for Tony Scott, perhaps, maybe even Christian Slater. I don't know.
100%.
Yeah, Christian Slater. This is Christian Slater's Apex Mountain. Saul Rubinek, 100%. There's no doubt. This is Saul Rubinek. This is his Oscar moment. He's really going for it. So yeah, I love the Saul Rubinek. He really should have been my choice for the field when I was looking at it, and I picked Oldman. I think the sleeper is Saul Rubinek. I think he's the guy that really shows up, steals the scene. I love him. It's just amazing. He's got an award named after him from another podcast, the Saul Rubinek Award. So if you're picking Saul, I'm going to pick someone who was a staple of my childhood. I think he slipping to this point, it's amazing for me. I'm thrilled. I probably could have picked him number 3 and would have been happy. Bronson Pinchot. I'm talking about Balky from Perfect Strangers. I'm talking about my guy, the art dealer from Beverly Hills Cop. I think he was so popular in Beverly Hills Cop 1, they brought him back for 2, and he's in All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise. This guy, quite the 11-year run for Bronson. One of my favorite just stills from this movie is the still of him with all the cocaine on his face. Just that scene in and of itself, just. I love Elliot. Just the scene that they filmed with him on that amusement park, that was famously shot over like 2 days, and those guys were he was really actually sick. And God, there was a reason, and I think Tony Scott actually had them just writing it on repeat over and over and over and over and over again, which was why they were just like at the end of it, just all on Dramamine and just all sorts of shit. So yeah, okay. So we still have Sizemore on the board. We each have 2 slots left to fill. Sizemore, Chris Penn, Christian Slater, and who is the? Oh wait, no. I'm sorry. You actually now have.
I got 5 or 6.
6 now.
Yeah.
We each have 6. So now it's just Sizemore, Chris Penn, and then I'm going to end up with Slater, my boy Slater. Yeah.
I can't not give some love to my man Chris Penn. Dude always brought it every time you saw him in a movie. He's great in the little bit of time he is here. He's great in the little bit of time in Rush Hour. He's great in the little bit of time in Reservoir Dogs. People knew how to use Chris Penn well, and he is used well here.
Footloose.
Footloose, of course.
Don't love me some Footloose. So understanding that. Wait, hold on. So if you there has to be someone else left on the board, because if you're taking Chris Penn, then I'm going to take Tom Sizemore.
Oof.
Oh, is Rappaport's still on the board? I'm taking Rappaport.
Oh, okay, yeah, that 13-foot tall bastard.
Well, do you want to change your vote? Do you want to take Rappaport over Chris Penn? I
Nope.
feel like they kind of look similar. Okay, I'm going to take Rappaport. Just I love Dick Ritchie. He's a lot of the levity. He's the heart of this. So that means you're going to end up with Sizemore on your team anyway. You tried to avoid it. But you know what? Fucking A. If I have to have Sizemore, I want to team him up with Chris Penn. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like those basketball teams where you're like, all right, well, if I have to have Bill Laimbeer, I might as well put him with who's the other dude that would just bash
everybody on that team.
On that team, I'm totally blank. He ended up playing for the Sixers for a little bit. I want to say it's not Malone, but yeah, they were famously boys. Yeah. God dang, that's what
bug me for a while.
That is going to bug me for a while. Yeah. It'll probably Rick Mahorn. Boom. Yes.
Rick Mahorn. It is.
Got it.
I hated that guy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Rick Mahorn. And I forgot to bring it up earlier when we were talking about Tarantino, but the basketball reference I wanted to put down is I heard another film critic talk about this in terms of when he was talking with one of the actors who was on the set, and basically comparing this to basketball in terms of working for Tarantino was like going from in the 90s when they had, when they were like struggling to score 70 points to one of these like Doug Moe offenses, like Mike D'Antonio, where it's just, Golden State Warriors now, small ball, couple seconds or less, get the shot up, run up and down the court. It was really this, it was kind of the film by, in and of itself was not formulaic in terms of what a normal film looks like. And then just the on-set kind of atmosphere that they said it was just people were kind of and it shows, right? They were allowed to just go for it. These guys, it had a lot of big names, a lot of talent, and these guys were just encouraged to have a lot of fun and just go record and go for it. And so, the result was really awesome.
Yeah, I think that analogy works.
Yeah, no, I thought it did too. When I heard it, I was like, oh gosh, I really want to mention that because it does seem like something that's worth, kind of pointing out. Just not only did Tarantino kind of change the way, because there's been a lot of imitators of Tarantino after the fact, and no one would argue that the way he writes, you can sit there and we could, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, the movie Go, just. Lots of them, there's a couple more that are escaping me that just are like very clear kind of like, there are people imitating Tarantino.
Yeah, someone called up and said, give me one of those.
Yes, exactly. But, the other thing is just, this is a guy who loves movies. We've talked a lot about how he works that love into his movies. This is a movie about movies, right? A lot of times if you look in the background, there's a movie playing or there's movie posters hanging on the wall. There's references to him all the time. So, it's a great movie to rewatch again because you hit the nail on the head. It's like going to film school. If you're someone who's interested in film, but you're just like, I just don't know where to start. Pick up a Tarantino film, and then just start listening for the cues and then start following your little trail of breadcrumbs, and it'll lead in a pretty cool place.
Yep, keep a pen and pad ready.
That's right. We have a bunch of announcements for us here. Do you have anything that you're working on or you have coming up that you want to let our listeners that are still with us know about that they can come catch, or anything to promote?
Not a whole lot right now. I'm just slow and steady reviewing movies. It's summer blockbuster season, so this is the fun time of the year. So it seems like people are getting more vaccinated. They're getting out to the theaters more often. Those box office numbers are starting to go up.
That's right.
People are slowly getting back to the theaters, man. So
that AMC stock's going up.
AMC stock's going up.
That's right.
So yeah, it's just laying down these reviews. I am working on. So you talked about film school. Something I did at the beginning of 2020 is called 100 for 100, where I did 100 movies for people who are kind of new to watching movies. I think these 100 you should watch at least once to get an appreciation of film. I am doing a different version of that for a specific genre. I'm slowly working on my 100 greatest science fiction movies of all time list.
Oh, wow.
So that depending on a couple of things, will be either kicking off the very beginning of next year or a little bit later on down the road. But I'm slowly compiling my 100 greatest science fiction movies.
I really enjoyed your review on Cruella. But as a dad of two, I watch a lot of Disney Plus, so that was something that was on our radar. And what's the best movie you've seen recently? The best newer movie you've seen in a while?
Boy, it's going to be Cruella.
It's going to be Cruella,
yeah. Like I said, this is the start of the summer blockbuster,
right,
and it has been a fairly weak blockbuster for me so far. Like give me my action, give me my explosions, and nothing has really satisfied that itch. Wrath of Man didn't really do it for me. Without Remorse didn't really do it for me. Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard is kind of did it for me, but I think all in all, man, Black Widow is going to be what kind of really gets things back up and running. But Cruella is it's great, man. Yeah, I did not have great expectations going into it. I guess another live action joint, I guess. Yeah, why not? But it's got a nature to it, man. That's just really great.
Emma Stone's amazing. One of our favorites here. Let me ask you this, because you are a comic guy, right?
Oh, definitely.
So one of and this isn't a movie, but you're a paprika guy. So pop is in the title, pop culture.
Pop culture.
What did you think, or have you seen Sweet Tooth? And what are your thoughts on that? That was one of the favorite things I've seen in a while.
Yeah, a lot of people are giving Sweet Tooth a lot of great praise. For me, it's just never something I was interested in. Like I remember the big rollout of the first issue of Sweet Tooth, and people are like, "This is it." I'm like, it's just not. It's not
for you.
For me. Not for me. But people are loving it, which is good. Hopefully that means more of that goodness down the road with other projects. Obviously Jupiter's Legacy won't be it. But
I'm really surprised by some of the DC stuff that's come out. Doom Patrol was also really good.
People love some good Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
It's a great couple seasons.
Yeah, so I was surprised. Us here at TKOK Podcast Network, first and foremost, we always want to make sure you guys are listening or checking out the other podcasts that make up the network. So make sure you are listening to Concerts That Made Us and Pop Mom's podcast. Season 2 of New Dad coming soon. We're going to be
that cool merch.
Yeah, Father's Day, I believe, is what we're going to do, a live stream. I have a good portion of the season pretty scheduled out, except for this first episode. So if you're listening and there are things that you want to see or hear from that first episode, let me know. I'm willing to take some ideas. Right now we're leaning towards just having a bunch of the dads from season 1 come back and kind of give us a little status check where they're at, and before we get the recorded episodes start to roll out. Also, pretty cool bit of information or news for us. I'm going to be on History of Westeros on Father's Day as well. Yeah, so the good folks over there, Aziz and Ashea, I'll be on Father's Day. So that Sunday, or this upcoming Sunday, talking about lost Valyrian steel. You have been to Ice and Fire Con before, correct, Darryl?
I have been to 2 Ice and Fire Cons. The Ice and Fire Con this year was unfortunately nixed.
Yep.
So a whole bunch of us are just getting together to hang out at a giant resort
that's awesome.
Here in a couple of months. So yeah, a lot of people from the different Game of Thrones Facebook groups were all getting together just to hang out for a weekend.
I miss it. I'm looking forward to 2022. Hopefully I'll be able to attend that one. I was there in 2019. Yeah, 2019, the last one they had. That was my first one. It was just a gateway drug, and then they took the drugs away from me. So unfortunate. So a lot of good things, big things happening here. So, hopefully everyone is able to remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that stuff does help tremendously. Please go over and check out Darryl and the Paprika Facebook group. It's one of my favorite groups that I'm in, and always great content there. A lot of smart members of the community posting. If not just Darryl, it's just a ton of people posting great content over there. So I highly suggest people going and joining that. And we appreciate you guys joining us and talking about True Romance, my favorite movie. Darryl, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I learned a lot from you.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me. Anytime you want me back to talk about movies, I am always available for that.
Well, that is music to my ears. Speaking of music to my ears, we got Prod Cause, I hear, coming in to take us away. Everyone, have a great weekend, I know we seem far from it, but it'll be here before we know it. To all the dads out there, happy Father's Day. If I don't see you before then. And we at TKOK Podcast Network love you guys. Take care.